Alright, it's 10 past according to my iPhone, which is the one that decides. So very, very warm welcome to all of you, and especially warm welcome to our guests. We will be doing this in English because we have an English speaker in the panel. We have Michel Roig from Fingerprint Cards. Very warm welcome. We have Patrice Meilland from Zwipe, and we have David Larsson from Sileon. So maybe starting out by a short description of yourself and what you do. Maybe starting with David.
Sure. I'm David Larsson, CEO of Sileon. Sileon is a tech company providing tech for primarily card issuers and banks, so they can offer buy now pay later on the existing card base. Bit about myself. My background is more within tech than payments, so I'm spent 15, 16 years in the big techs like Microsoft, in various leading strategy roles internationally for 15, 16 years.
Shall I continue? Yeah. Okay, so Patrice Meilland, nice to meet you. So I work as a Chief Strategy and Product Officer for Zwipe. Zwipe is a company that is based in Oslo and provides solutions for biometric cards. So I thought that, I'd bring one. It's easier to understand what we do when you see something. So when it comes to me, I've been in the card business for like 8 years with IDEMIA, which is one of the top 2 largest card manufacturers in the world. And before that, with STMicroelectronics for quite many years, providing chips for smartphones, mobile phones, and consumer electronics as well.
Hi everybody, Michel Roig. I'm the president of Payments and Access within Fingerprint Cards. We do biometric solutions, so we work with partners and customers like Zwipe and others, where we provide the biometric solution for biometric payment cards. We provide sensors for mobile phones, for door locks, anything where you want to identify and authenticate the user. Background within this company, 7 years. I have more of a semiconductor consumer electronic background as well, so many years, of course, with Ericsson starting my career, but with Fingerprint for 7 years.
And maybe it's a little bit different businesses, but the common denominator here is obviously digital payments in different kinds. And maybe we start with the big discussion on cash and what's happening in the cash market. And digital payments continue to grow at the expense of cash. And how do you view this trend?
Start with Dave. I can start, yeah. I think the trend with cash is evident. It's definitely on decline. That said, and especially when we look here in Sweden, the Nordics, it's pretty much we're out of cash. But we cannot forget that the rest of the world are not like here. And cash will remain an important payment method for quite some time, but on steady decline, obviously.
Yeah. I think, of course, I share that view. I can add just a few numbers because, I mean, there was a global payment report just out maybe a couple of weeks ago from FIS and WorldPay, so one of the largest processors in the world. And the use of cash at the point of sale in 2022 was 16% of the value of spending at the POS. And of course, it's hiding a lot of contrast. Some countries like Vietnam, are more than still 40% of cash, but also Saudi Arabia, which you wouldn't necessarily think so, is also more than 40%. And you still have quite a few countries, around 10% in Europe, be it Finland, be it Netherlands, France, UK. So I mean, there's cash is definitely on the decrease, but it's not gone yet.
Yeah, and if I add to that, I think we always talk quite a lot about different digital payments methods competing, but actually there's still quite a significant market to tap into, which is still cash. So I think there's opportunities for many different payment methods, and we still have to make sure that we get to the 100% cashless society. So a lot to do.
And if we then move into digital payments, and as you said, Michel, there's a large number of different digital payments and different ways of pay electronically. And we have cards, we have mobile wallets, we have buy now pay later, etc. What are the pros and cons as you see? You're in different types of like end markets and end users. What pros and cons do you see, starting with you, Michel, with different methods?
I mean, we obviously, especially me, who are in charge of our biometric payment card initiative, I always get the question, will not mobile phones take over the world? And we don't really see it that way. I mean, we see it complementary. We provide biometric solutions to authenticate you. And for sure, when you want to do a transaction, you don't want it to be too seamless. You want to have a little bit of friction because you really want to show intent. You want to show that you authenticate or do a transaction. So in the mobile phones, you're already using biometrics for transactions. And we see this as a next evolution, a big potential market where we believe why should it be different in one form factor than the other? And let's not stop there. There will be many, many different form factors. There will be wristwatches where you pay, rings, anything. And if you want to be compliant all across the board, you will have some type of authentication. You must have authentication. And why not biometrics in all form factors?
Yeah, I can add also to, I agree with Michel that we should not oppose cards and mobiles. I mean, they've got each their pros and cons. I can obviously, we're in cards, and so I can name 3 things that I think play in the favor of cards. Number one is the worldwide acceptance. If you carry a card on an international network like Visa or MasterCard, you pretty much can pay everywhere, right? And so number 2, it's the perception of security. So I'm not saying that mobile phones are less secure, but I'm saying each time there's a survey, consumers will always answer with a gap of around 10%, take it or leave it, right? That they perceive their payment card more secure than their mobile phone. Because you don't hear about wide hacking of payment cards, but you hear about malicious apps and sucking your data out of your phone. It's got nothing to do with payment, but there's a background noise to it, if you will. And the third thing is that it's very simple. I mean, cards, they just always work. I mean, when you pull out a card of your pocket, it does always work. Sometimes mobile phone need a recharge. So if you want, if you want something that you can be sure of to pay anytime and anywhere, cards still hold the pole position today. That's a fact.
Yeah, in terms of digital payment methods, it's definitely growing and it's taking market share in all markets, more in some and less in some. Then now we talk a lot about cards, but there are also other ways of payments, sort of account-to-account payments that are growing rapidly, which is that basically payment without the card, just from one bank account to another bank account, and that's growing quite much in countries such as Brazil and so on, where maybe they do not have so much card penetration as we do here in the Western world, so they sort of hop over one of the technical involvements. But that will take time, a long time, and cards will remain there as the dominant technology, also inside the digital payment methods, such as the digital wallets. I think many of you, including myself, use Apple Pay today, and that's viewed as a digital wallet, a digital payment method, but it's using the card rails. So when we say card, it's actually 2 things. One is the plastic cards that you're very interested in, of a natural reason, but the other thing is the card rails, which is a extremely complicated and well-defined, well-working technology set up by Visa and MasterCard and all these card companies, and that will remain for a long, long time. So it's really the competition between card rails technology and account-to-account payment technology. Account-to-account will eventually win, but we don't know when. It might take many, many, many years. And then it's the competition between the plastic card and how to identify yourself with the plastic card, and also the digital wallet, where you identify yourself with, for example, Apple Pay with a face recognition, or as you know, in Asia, it's the dominant payment method with a payment wallet. So all in all, some, I view it as 2 competitions: account-to-account versus the payment rails, and then card versus, let's say, the digital wallet. And I think we all know where it's going to end up eventually, but it might take 20 years. And in the meanwhile, it's a huge market for cards, and it's a huge market for payments in general, and it's growing.
So I think let's stay here for a bit, and I mean you've all touched upon this, but let's address the big elephant in the room, the mobile wallet and Apple Pay. And I'm sure you've gotten this question countless of times, and so have I. So what is to say that that the cards will not be cut off and that other payments will not be cut off and that Apple or Samsung or somebody will develop this on their own? What is your thinking? What is the usual answer around this question? We're starting with David.
Again, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I thought I'd go back and
well,
forth.
okay, let's put it this way. I've been part of when the big tech draw their strategies and decide on what to do. And I was sitting and part of in Microsoft when we were drafting how to win the living room with Xbox and so on. And then it was not a question whether how is the cost or what's the ROI or anything like that. It was just when and how long time. And big tech has decided to take a big part of payments. Now we see Apple goes into buy now, pay later. They're decided to be there, and they will be there. So I think that's my crude answer on that. Just need to expect it.
So I think so when it comes to your question, a number first. I mean, every year, and it's still going to grow. More than 3 billion payment cards are issued, and there are like 15 billion in circulation. In 4 out of the 5 regions of the world, so in North America, South America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. So in 4 of those, in the next 5 years, it's still going to be the dominant method to pay at the point of sale. So Asia being the exception, right? And a big one, of course. But then again, so no doubt that digital wallet will grow, but it's actually, we're not in the business of just any card. We're in a business of a very specific card. And in fact, the growth of digital wallet is actually a massive opportunity for that type of cards. Look at metal cards over the past 4 years, or 10 years, right? Metal cards have gone from nothing to 40 million cards last year, right? And they're selling for maybe $40, $50, some of them much higher. Because when digital wallets grow, the bank fear that they are going to be disintermediated. They don't have the link, this tangible link and emotional link with their consumer anymore. Where do you see the bank brand? You can still see it on the card. And so the banks need solutions to keep the share on mind of their, I would say, either the wealthy customers or the ones that have an appetite for innovation, for technology. The fintechs need differentiation. So actually, the growth of digital wallet is an opportunity for cards, and you were using the word plastic cards, for cards that are way beyond plastic, right? It can be biometric, it can be metal, it can be recycled material. There are even people coming up with wooden cards. So actually, when it comes to us, we're not worried about the emergence of the digital wallet because it actually helps the need for banks and also the card makers to capture the mindset of their consumers, for some, and to grow the ASP, the average sales price of what the card makers are selling, on the other hand. So it's a win-win situation, actually.
And again, I mean, I think we don't even know what will be the future payment method. We might say it will end up here, but we might be totally wrong. It might be seamless or naked and everything we talk about. But again, of course, me and Patrice, we are a bit biased to the card here, but I think you should not forget that the card is also a very strong branding tool. When you think about fintechs, all of them are digital first. But actually, the first thing after you sign up, you order a card. And they use metal cards or different things to differentiate, to do customer acquisition and retention. And we've done a survey recently where we see by the banks that have launched recently the biometric card, actually you have a stronger growth in acquiring premium customer by offering a differentiated product, including the biometric card. And now we are in the wallet, so we're already expecting that you have a few cards. There's 15 billion in circulation, means you at least have 3 or 4 in your pocket. it will become your top of wallet. It will be the card you mostly use because you feel that it adds something on top of the other cards in your wallet. So let's not forget the branding is important. Samsung is a consumer electronic company. They're in the mobile phone space. They're launching a card, a biometric card. So for some reason, there's still this convergence. And if we look at all the fintechs, if we look at PayPal's e-commerce company, right? One of the biggest e-commerce companies in the world, started very early. They issue cards. They do that to be able to address not only the millennials and the new tech people, but they also need to address countries where you are unbanked. And by providing a card, you get into that rails. And talking about rails, yes, MasterCard and Visa, I think, or let's talk EMVCo, because it's a little bit more than MasterCard and Visa. They have been here for a long time. They've established sort of the networks, the highways that it's very costly to invest in and do. And of course, there can be other rails. But if we talk about account to account, there could be account to account that still, if we do the opposite twist, that are still issuing cards. So that you will use the card, but for account to account. So you will have a combination. So I'm with Patrice here. We will have cards for a long time for both companies to make a lot of profit.
So coexistence is the word that I think was not mentioned. That's what you're talking about, right?
Exactly.
We'll work side by side. But if we continue and just dig down a little bit into what you're mentioning here about different regions, etc. So, I mean, we have, if I look at payments at POS, for instance, in the FIS report that you were referring to, I was actually surprised to see how big a part of the global payments that are made in China. So Asia is a huge market. What has driven the dominance of mobile wallets in Asia? Because if you again look at the same report and you look at the growth rates and you look at the shares that are being made through mobile wallets, I mean, there's a staggering difference between regions, and Asia really sticks out. So what has driven that? And is it a lost market, so to speak, for you guys that are in it?
Okay, I can start. I'm in the middle. So I mean, to the first part of your question, I think a large part of this emergent is what we call super app. And you know, I can name Alipay and WeChat because originally, I mean, those apps are way more than just payment. You can, if you travel there, and of course now it's happening also in Indonesia, in Singapore, but you can. It's like it's both an e-commerce hub and a payment place. So you can order a taxi, you can order food, you can do plenty of things, and you check out and you pay. And when you add that to the fact that in terms of demography, so I mean, China is a PE of 1.4 billion, and like if you take Europe, it's way more fragmented. Then you add, I would say, a very fertile ground to the super rapid growth of those super apps, right? And so I mean, those digital wallets have really taken off, mostly in China, but not only, in many other also Asian countries. And is it a lost market? Well, it depends again for whom and for what. I think there are probably still 600 million cards being issued each year in China. So I mean, when it comes to us as a company, we don't really play there for other reasons, because it's a very difficult market to enter. We're a small company. We cannot, I mean, we need to focus a little bit, right? So, I mean, but I think China is still a massive opportunity for payments, depending on what you do.
And I have to unfortunately say that we have a very specific political situation at the moment as well. You have probably seen what's going on in the world about content, and we talk about WeChat, Alipay. Of course, there was a lot of discussion a few years back, will they not take over the world, and that will be the means of payment, and you see WeChat being accepted outside of China. But I think things are changing, tides are changing, and I don't believe that you will have the same type of trust in Chinese technology all around the world and acceptance. It will work for the local and domestic market and also for them going outside. But I think the opposite is probably not happening anytime soon. And on top of that, a lot of the domestic market, except for this previous year where there was lockdowns, are traveling outside. And sure, WeChat was getting acceptance, right? But I think that's changing. All of them have a either MasterCard or Visa issued card from their Chinese bank that they use when they travel abroad. And that is because of the interoperability that you have globally. So lost market, I'll say the same as Patrice. I think you will see cards in China still, but there's very specific regulations, made in China regulations, local chipsets and so on. So it's a very controlled market, and they can do that because they have a very huge market for themselves. So lost, not really. Do we play there? I don't think it will be the first market where we see growth for biometric cards.
And for Sileon, if I may comment, our technology works as good with digital wallets as with cards, card rails. So it's certainly not a lost market, even though I must echo China is most likely not the first market we will go into.
Is it fair to say, you think, that we're talking about ties between, for instance, you know, a mobile wallet and a card, and maybe BNPL and a card, and you have, you know, I know what's it called in English, but when you use Swish or some similar system, is also tied to the card. Is that tie closer, you think, here than it is over there? And will that tie stay for a long time?
I can start. I mean, we come back to the same thing. I mean, you can have, we all know Swish, right? It's a peer-to-peer account-to-account with a mobile identifier. In China, of course, you can do that because you have such a huge population. And in Sweden, we've tried to get acceptance for Swish, maybe in our neighboring countries. But you will never have Swish in France. It is very local, but it's an alternative method for small payments, which is easy here and now. But you will have, again, we come back to the coexistence of very many different payment methods. So I think, again, this is just one more type of payment that will coexist with other methods.
But back to your question, yes, I think you're right, because the card rails here and the card technology has been around for a longer time. It's more than in, let's say, the newer economies in the BRIC countries. And it's technology both from also looking at the banks. The banks has been around for a longer time. They have more of legacy systems. It's a more of an investment to change to account, let's say. So therefore, Swish might be the exception here. But as you say, it's very, very local. Swish won't even work outside Sweden. So, for example, Vipps, the Norwegian Swish, is running on card rails. So it will be very much card rail based.
And you've got a lot of agree that there's fragmentation there. So in France, it's called I mean Lydia, which is you know a person-to-person, account-to-account. In Poland, very popular. I think it's called Blik, if I'm not mistaken. So I mean, it's like it's one of those things where every country comes up with their system, and which is nice as long as you're operating within the country, but it does not play very well when you go outside the country. And there again, if your country is China, you know, then okay, that's a different ball game as if your country is much smaller. So again, I think history has shown, but history is not always a predictor for the future, but for payment means it's like they add up to each other. And so ultimately some are phased out. I mean, we said that cash will be ultimately phased out, but cash has been around for 3,000 years. It's about time it's being phased out. So you know, I think I probably won't see the cards being phased out. I hope. And again, the digital wallet emergence or the peer-to-peer payment are just things that will make our life easier in certain use cases, and cards will make our life easier in other use cases. And they will stick around for a long time because there's a huge infrastructure and legacy in the world of what David calls card rails, which is true.
Sorry, Markus, just to add one thing. And I think you shouldn't see the card as a legacy dinosaur that is not evolving. I mean, things are happening in that space as well. I mean, on top of biometric cards. But I mean, I think coming back to the topic here, it's convenience. You will use what's convenient for the moment. So if it's easier for me to do a swish, I will do a swish. But now you see tap on phone coming, right? So all phones in the future will be able to accept a payment. And it could be phone to phone or card to phone or phone, well, phone to card will not work, but you will have combinations, right? So evolution is happening also in these legacy systems. So whatever is most convenient at the moment for you as a user, you will use.
And if we talk about Europe, so it's all of our home markets, Europe, and it's as you said, a very fragmented market and many different languages, many different cultures, etc. Um, is it fair to say that I lost my train of thought? I'll come back to that. I'm sorry about this. I'll turn on to another one. We talked a little bit boundaries between payments. They're being blended, right? For instance, you have a credit card which is connected to Apple Pay. You have Klarna having their own credit card and doing BNPL at the moment. How do you differentiate in that? And how do you work with those issues? And do you see it as a threat?
I certainly don't view it as a threat. This is just a fact. And I think what you describe is very much the digital wallets, where you combine all sorts of payment methods. Today they're running on card rails. In a couple of years it might be running on account to account. And for Sileon, if the question is that frank, how we view it as a threat, no, absolutely not. Our technology is agnostic what type of rails or card or payment method it is. We are actually part of that blending, as you point out. It's how you include buy now pay later functionality on cards, or how you include buy now pay later functionality in digital wallets.
And again, if you allow me to, let's say, have a spin to your question in the sense that rather to see, the synergies between the two, let me tell you where they can complement each other. So if you talk about one of the major agendas of the governments of the emerging economies is financial inclusion, right? And when in an emerging economy you want to give subsidies for health, education, food sometimes, then cash is not an option because it comes with a lot of problems, and corruption can be one, right? So if you give to citizens a biometric card by which they can authenticate themselves, and then you've got like a peer-to-peer payment to that account, which is a prepaid account, you know that only the person who's got the right fingerprint will be able to use that money. So, that's... Another one is accessibility. There are, according to the World Health Organization, there are 50 million of people totally blind in the world, and nearly 1 billion being sight impaired of some kind. And how do you get those people to pin a code on a glass of payment terminal? Or how do they use a smartphone? There again, if you use your biometry, you can pay. So again, you can think there are many more cases where those digital wallets and cards complement nicely each other than cannibalize each other.
I echo both here, and I don't have very much more to add, but you talked about credit card, debit cards, buy now, pay later. Buy now, pay later credit card, it's two different financial methods of doing the same thing, right? You either have a credit card and you pay at the end of the month or later with some interest, or you buy now, pay later on an e-commerce platform. So I think you will see different options depending on what fits you the best. Many say always use credit because you don't use your own money, you pay at the end of the month, you don't have the liability. At the end, you need to decide if you want to take that risk or not, and make sure you pay. And when it's debit, well, debit could be on the rail, but it could be account to account, which is immediate withdrawal of funds, right? So I think coming back to complementary, I think financial inclusion, making sure that you always know who's using the services. Regulations are more and more strict. I think there's a lot of big data that can be used in the background going forward. It's not just about knowing who paid, but knowing that it was in fact you that paid at that clock time in that city. There's a lot of background noise that you can eliminate and make sure that you don't have to put friction to consumers.
I meant to ask one more question, but I got 30 seconds left, so maybe I'll try to stick in very quickly. In the report you were referring to, the FIS report, the card market in Europe grows by 7% per year for the coming 5 years. And I think it's 2 to 3 or maybe 4% globally. Does this growth, and you say that it will be the dominating payment method for at least in 5 years, according to these forecasts, does it also make it more sticky, Michel?
Definitely. I mean, it's a huge, as we said, it's a huge investment that's been going on for so many years. It's not going to die overnight, right? So I think stickiness because of that infrastructure, stickiness because of trust. It's not a consumer product, it's a licensed product by financial institutions that are regulated. This creates, for us, a strong stickiness as a component and solution provider.
And we don't have much time, but to say, here again, two very different realities. E-commerce, which is growing like digital, like crazy, right? And payment at the point, at the point of sale, where, like you said, in Europe and in the world, card will be very much dominating, except in Asia for quite some time.
In terms of card, I agree with you too. I think the card will be dominating payment technology, at least in the Western world, for a long time. Then we need to take care, when we say card, we have card technology, and then we have the plastic card. The card technology, absolutely, it's going to take a long time to replace it. Plastic cards, you name a couple of various cards, including wood, but there is one card, it's the virtual card that is now dominating, or it's not absolutely not dominating, but it's growing rapidly.
I think we unfortunately have to cut. I could go on forever, it feels like. But thank you very much for being here, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.